Her husband and daughter shut her out for a month, so she chose to leave. 5 years later, he called and asked her to attend their daughter's wedding. She went, not knowing what to expect. When he saw her there, his hands began to shake, and she finally understood the power of walking away. Hi, my beautiful family, may the Almighty cover you with endless mercy, bless your homes with peace, and crown your hearts with strength that never fades. May he grant every woman dignity that cannot be shaken, every man wisdom that inspires, and every child joy that lights the world. May sickness never touch you, may sorrow never hold you, and may your days shine brighter than the stars. I pray for your health, your success, and your family's happiness, that your steps lead only to blessings and your nights bring you calm. May God lift you when you fall, guide you when you are uncertain, and hold you close in his love forever. If your heart is true, like the video, if your love is real, write, present with my brother, Mr. Peter. Every like, every comment is not just support. It is the heartbeat that keeps this family alive. There are wounds that bleed without blood, and deaths that happen while you're still breathing. Tara Wash was dying in a house full of people who no longer saw her. The morning began like all the others had for the past month. Tara stood at the kitchen counter, her dark hands moving with practiced efficiency as she cracked eggs into a bowl, whisked them until they turned pale yellow, and poured them into the heated pan. The sizzle filled the silence that had become her only companion in this house. Behind her, she heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy ones belonging to Niels, lighter ones belonging to Zinnia. She had been awake since before dawn, as she was every morning now. Sleep came in fragments, broken by the anxiety of wondering if today would be different. If today they would finally speak to her. If today the nightmare would end. But dawn had brought no answers, only the familiar routine of preparing food for people who would consume it without acknowledging the hands that made it. She set the table, as she always did. 3 plates, 3 forks, 3 glasses of juice. She arranged everything perfectly, the way Niels preferred, with the fork on the left and the knife blade facing inward. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the last napkin folded into a neat triangle. She had folded it 3 times before getting it right, her fingers clumsy with nerves and exhaustion. They entered the kitchen together, and Tara's heart clenched with a hope that died instantly. Niels walked past her as if she were a piece of furniture, his eyes scanning the room but never landing on her face. Zinnia followed, her phone already in her hand, her attention absorbed by the glowing screen. They sat down at the table and began eating the food Tara had prepared. Not a word, not a glance, not even the basic courtesy of acknowledgement. Tara stood by the counter, her hands gripping the edge until her knuckles turned ashen. She watched them eat, watched them exist in her space as if she had already vanished. Niels reached for the salt without asking. Zinnia poured herself more juice without thanking. They chewed, they swallowed, they breathed the same air she breathed, and yet she was invisible. She had memorized every detail of these mornings. The way Niels's jaw moved when he chewed. The way Zinnia's thumb scrolled endlessly across her phone screen. The sound of forks against plates. The absence of conversation. Every detail was burned into her memory like a scar. I was thinking, Tara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we could talk about what's happening. Whatever I did, whatever hurt you both, I want to fix it. Nothing. Niels lifted his fork to his mouth. Zinnia scrolled on her phone. The silence pressed against Tara's chest like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. Please, Tara tried again, her voice cracking now. Just tell me what I did wrong. Zinnia stood up, leaving half her food on the plate, and walked out of the kitchen without a single glance in her mother's direction. Niels followed soon after, wiping his mouth with the napkin Tara had folded, placing it on the table and disappearing into his study. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in Tara's ears. She stood there alone, surrounded by the dishes they'd used and abandoned. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened window above the sink, a woman with tired eyes and shoulders that had begun to curve inward, as if her body was trying to make itself smaller, trying to take up less space in a home that no longer wanted her. This was day 23. She knew because she had been counting, each day marked in her mind like a prisoner, marking time on a cell wall. The days bled into each other after that, each one a carbon copy of the last. Tara would wake before dawn, her body conditioned to service even in sleep. She would prepare breakfast, and they would eat it in silence. She would clean the house, and they would move through it as if she were a ghost. She would cook dinner, and they would consume it without tasting, without seeing, without acknowledging the hands that had made it possible. She had tried everything. She had left notes on the counter, simple messages like "I love you" or "Please talk to me," but they remained unread, eventually thrown away with the day's trash. She had stood in doorways, blocking their path, hoping to force a confrontation. They simply waited for her to move, their faces blank, their eyes looking through her rather than at her. She had even tried anger, raising her voice, demanding they acknowledge her presence. But her words had fallen into the void of their silence, swallowed up without causing even a ripple. On day 27, Tara tried something different. She positioned herself directly in Niels's path as he came down the stairs, forcing him to see her, forcing him to respond. Her heart hammered in her chest as she watched him descend, each step bringing him closer to collision, closer to having to acknowledge that she existed. He stopped. For a moment, hope flared in her chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe the spell would break. Maybe he would finally look at her, finally speak, finally remember that she was human. Then he stepped around her, his body angling to avoid even brushing against hers, and continued on his way. She might as well have been a coat rack. The deliberate nature of the avoidance, the way he moved his body to ensure no accidental contact, hurt more than outright cruelty would have. At least cruelty acknowledged existence. This was erasure. That night, Tara lay in the bed they used to share, the bed that was now hers alone. Through the walls, she could hear laughter. Niels and Zinnia were watching something together, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm of joy that excluded her entirely. They could laugh. They could speak. They could be human with each other, just not with her. She pressed her hands over her ears, trying to block out the sound, but it seeped through anyway. Each burst of laughter was a knife in her heart, reminding her that they had chosen this. They weren't incapable of warmth or connection or joy. They simply had decided she wasn't worthy of receiving any of it. Day 30 arrived, with rain tapping against the windows. Tara stood in the kitchen preparing their lunch when she heard them talking in the next room. She froze, her knife suspended over the cutting board, straining to hear their words. "We should go out tonight," Zinnia said, her voice bright and clear. The sound of it, her daughter's voice, which had been silent to her for so long, nearly brought Tara to her knees. "Where do you want to go?" Niels replied, warmth in his tone that Tara hadn't heard directed at her in forever. "Anywhere. Just the two of us." "Perfect. Just the two of us." Tara's hands stilled over the cutting board. "Just the two of us." The words drove themselves into her heart like nails. She had been erased. Not just ignored, not just overlooked, but completely removed from the equation of their lives. They were making plans, living their lives, existing in a world where she simply didn't matter. She walked to the doorway and stood there, watching them plan their evening together. They sat on the couch, comfortable and content, existing in a world that had no room for her. Tara cleared her throat. Neither of them turned. She cleared it again, louder this time, the sound harsh in the quiet room. Zinnia's eyes flickered toward her for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Tara to see something cold and deliberate in her daughter's gaze, before looking away again, as if Tara's presence was an interruption not worth addressing, as if she were background noise, easily dismissed, fundamentally unimportant. That look broke something in Tara that had been cracking for 30 days. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't unconscious. Zinnia had seen her, had made the choice to look away, had decided actively, deliberately, that her mother wasn't worth acknowledging. The cruelty wasn't passive, it was intentional, and that made it so much worse. Day 31 arrived with a sunrise that painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. Tara stood at the bedroom window and watched the world wake up. Somewhere in the house, Niels was showering. Somewhere else, Zinnia was probably still asleep, dreaming dreams that no longer included her mother. Tara turned from the window and looked at the room she had lived in for so many years. The walls she had painted, the curtains she had chosen, the pictures she had hung, none of it felt like hers anymore. It was all just set dressing in someone else's story. She moved to the closet and pulled out a small bag. She began folding clothes, selecting only what she truly needed. A few shirts, a few pairs of pants, undergarments, one pair of shoes. Everything fit into the single bag with room to spare. Her entire life compressed into something she could carry with one hand. From the dresser, she took the things that mattered. A photograph of her mother, long past. A journal she'd kept before she forgot how to write about her own feelings. A small wooden bird her father had carved for her when she was a child. These went into the bag too. She looked at the wedding ring on her finger. The gold band caught the morning light, glinting with false promises. She twisted it off, feeling the groove it had worn into her skin over the years, and held it in her palm. It was heavier than she remembered. Downstairs, she placed the ring on the kitchen counter, next to the coffee maker that would brew Niels's morning coffee, next to the spot where Zinnia always left her keys. Let them find it there. Let them understand that she had left willingly, that she had chosen to go, rather than beg for scraps of their attention. She did not leave a note. What was there to say? They had made their feelings clear through 31 days of perfect silence. Words would have been redundant. Tara picked up her bag, took one last look at the house she had built with her own hands and heart, and walked out the front door. The morning air was cool against her face. Birds sang in the trees lining the street. The world continued spinning, indifferent to her pain, and somehow that was comforting. She did not cry. She did not look back. She simply put one foot in front of the other and walked away from everything she had ever known, carrying nothing but her pride and a small bag of belongings. Behind her, the house remained silent. Inside, Niels and Zinnia would wake soon, would come downstairs expecting breakfast, would find an empty kitchen and a wedding ring glinting on the counter like an accusation, but Tara would be gone. Already disappearing into the future she would build alone. Chapter 2. The Taste of Freedom and Dust. Pride makes a bitter meal, but it's better than begging at a table where you're not wanted. The apartment smelled of industrial detergent and other people's lives. Tara stood in the center of the cramped studio, her small bag still clutched in her hand, and tried not to let the weight of her decision crush her. One room, that's all it was. One room with a narrow bed, a hot plate, and a bathroom so small you could touch both walls while sitting on the toilet. The walls were thin enough that she could hear conversations from neighboring apartments, the sounds of other lives being lived, arguments, laughter, crying babies, television shows playing too loud. This was what freedom looked like when you had nothing. This was what independence cost, when you walked away with only your dignity and a bag of clothes. Below her feet, the constant rumble of washing machines vibrated through the floorboards. The laundromat operated around the clock, and the rhythm of tumbling clothes would become the soundtrack to her new life. Thump, 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 like a heartbeat that never stopped. Sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, she would lie in bed and listen to that rhythm, finding strange comfort in its consistency. At least something in this new world was reliable. The landlady, Odalis Kempe, stood in the doorway, watching Tara with eyes that had seen too much and said too little. She was a small woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and hands gnarled from arthritis. Her face was weathered, lined with the kind of wrinkles that come from a hard life, lived without complaint. She wore a faded house dress and slippers that had seen better days, but her eyes were sharp. "Missing nothing. Rent is due on the 1st, Odalis said. Her voice gravelly from years of cigarettes. She'd quit smoking a decade ago. "No exceptions. You seem like you're running from something, and I don't judge that. Lord knows I've run from things in my time. But if you can't pay, you're out. Understood?" "Understood," Tara replied, her voice steadier than her hands. She appreciated the directness, the lack of prying questions. Odalis wasn't going to ask what brought her here or where she came from. In this building, everyone had stories they didn't want to tell. Odalis nodded once, a sharp, decisive movement, and left, her footsteps creaking down the wooden stairs. The door closed, and Tara was alone in a space that cost more than she had and offered less than she needed. She set her bag on the bed and sank down beside it. The mattress was thin, lumpy, and smelled faintly of mildew and the lives of previous tenants who had come and gone. Through the window, she could see the alley below, dumpsters overflowing with trash, a stray cat picking through the remains of someone's discarded meal. This was her view now. This was her kingdom. No manicured lawns, no flower gardens tended by professional landscapers, no sweeping driveways. Just concrete and garbage and the harsh reality of what it meant to start over with nothing. For the first time since leaving, tears threatened to come, but Tara swallowed them back. She had not cried when they ignored her, had not cried when she walked away, and she would not cry now. Tears were a luxury she could not afford. Tears required the safety of knowing someone might comfort you, and she had no one. Crying alone in this room would accomplish nothing except making her eyes puffy and her nose red, and she needed to look presentable for job hunting. By evening, Tara had unpacked her bag and secured her first job. The diner on the corner needed a dishwasher for the overnight shift. She had walked in, still carrying the confidence of someone who used to host dinner parties, who used to manage a household, who used to be someone. The manager, a tired-looking man with a stained apron and suspicious eyes, looked her up and down with the practiced assessment of someone who had hired and fired hundreds of desperate people. "You ever washed dishes before?" he asked, his voice flat and uninterested. He was eating a sandwich while he interviewed her, not bothering with the pretense that this was anything important. "I've washed dishes my whole life," Tara answered truthfully. She didn't mention that those dishes had been fine china, that the kitchens had been spacious and modern, that she'd never had to scrub industrial pots caked with burned food. "Night shift starts at midnight, ends at 7. Pay is minimal. You okay with that?" "I'm okay with that." She would have been okay with anything at that point. Beggars couldn't be choosers, and she was definitely a beggar now, no matter how straight she held her spine. He hired her on the spot. No questions about references or past employment. No curiosity about why a woman who carried herself with dignity would be desperate for such work. That was the mercy of places like this. They didn't ask because they didn't want to know. Everyone working these jobs had a story, and none of them were happy ones. That night, Tara stood at an industrial sink with water so hot it turned her hands red. She scrubbed plates crusted with egg yolk, scraped pans caked with burnt grease, and rinsed glasses smeared with lipstick prints. Around her, the kitchen staff shouted orders, dropped pans, cursed at each other with a familiarity that spoke of years working side by side. She was invisible here too, but it was a different kind of invisible. Here it didn't matter if they saw her. Here, she was paid for her labor, not expected to give it freely and then disappear. The work destroyed her hands. By the end of the first week, her palms had cracked and bled from the chemicals and heat. She wrapped them in bandages and kept working. By the end of the second week, calluses began to form, tough, ugly patches of skin that marked her as someone who had fallen from grace into necessity. One job was not enough. The rent swallowed most of what she earned, leaving almost nothing for food. Tara found a second job cleaning houses for wealthy families who wanted their homes spotless but didn't want to see the people who made them that way. She scrubbed their toilets, mopped their floors, dusted their expensive furniture, and left before they came home. Some left her payment on the counter with a terse note. Some left nothing, forcing her to call and ask, her voice small and apologetic. A third job came next. Weekend cashier at a grocery store where she bagged food she couldn't afford to buy. She watched customers load their carts with fresh vegetables, quality meat, bakery bread, and she went home to eat instant noodles and stale crackers she found on clearance. The exhaustion was crushing. Sleep became something she did in fragments, collapsing on her lumpy mattress between shifts, waking to alarms that felt like violence, dragging herself to the next job and the next. Her body ached constantly. Her feet swelled in shoes that were falling apart. Her back seized up from bending over sinks and scrubbing floors and standing for hours at the register. But every dollar she earned was hers. Every choice she made was her own. And slowly, painfully, that began to mean something. One night, as Tara climbed the stairs to her apartment, she heard crying coming from her own door. She stopped, confused, until she realized the sound was coming from her own throat. She had been crying without knowing it, tears running down her face while her mind was elsewhere, stuck in survival mode. Her body was weeping, even though her conscious mind refused to acknowledge the pain. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, and there, on the floor in front of her door, sat a container of soup. It was still warm, steam rising from under the lid. A small note in shaky handwriting read, "You're not as alone as you think." Oh. Tara picked up the container and held it against her chest. The warmth seeped through the plastic into her hands, into her arms, into the cold, hollow place in her chest where hope used to live. She sat on the floor right there, not bothering with a chair or the bed, just dropping down where she stood. She opened the container with trembling fingers. The soup was simple, chicken broth with vegetables and noodles, but it tasted like kindness. It tasted like someone seeing her, acknowledging her existence, caring whether she lived or died. She ate it slowly, savoring every spoonful, tears still running down her face, but different now. Not tears of despair, but tears of gratitude. Someone had noticed her. Someone had thought about her. Someone had taken the time to make her food and bring it to her door. It was such a small gesture, but it felt enormous in its significance. When she finished, she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She smiled. Just a small one, barely a curve of her lips, but it was real. Her face felt strange, making the expression, muscles unused to the movement. But it was there. A genuine smile, not the fake ones she'd worn like armor during her marriage, but something true and unguarded. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Tara's body adapted to the work, growing stronger even as it wore down. Her hands became instruments of labor, rough and capable. Her back learned to endure. Her feet toughened. She made no friends, attended no gatherings, sought no comfort from others. The people from her old life had vanished the moment she walked away. No calls, no messages, no concern for where she had gone or whether she was alive. The church congregation she had served for years never reached out. The neighbors she had smiled at for decades never knocked on her door. She had been erased from their lives as thoroughly as Niels and Zinnia had erased her from theirs. But Odalis checked on her. The old woman never asked questions, never pried into Tara's past, never offered unwanted advice. She simply appeared occasionally with containers of food, or knocked on the door to ask if Tara needed anything, or sat on the stairs and shared coffee in comfortable silence. "You're stronger than you look," Odalis said one morning, her eyes sharp despite their age. "I don't feel strong," Tara admitted. "Strength isn't about feeling. It's about continuing when you have every reason to quit." The months accumulated. Tara learned which customers at the diner tipped and which didn't. She learned which houses were easy to clean and which required hours of backbreaking work. She learned to stretch food to last longer, to repair clothes instead of buying new ones, to find joy in tiny things like a bird singing outside her window or the way the light caught dust motes in the afternoon. She never called Niels. She never tried to reach Zinnia. The silence that had driven her away became the armor that protected her from going back. Sometimes late at night, she wondered if they missed her. Sometimes she wondered if they even noticed she was gone. And sometimes, in her darkest moments, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But then morning would come, and she would get up, and she would go to work, and she would survive another day on her own terms. And that had to be enough, because the alternative, returning to a house where she was less than nothing, was worse than any hardship she faced. Now, Tara Wash had been many things in her: life, wife, mother, homemaker, invisible woman. But now, scrubbing dishes at midnight in a greasy diner, her hands raw and her body exhausted, she was becoming something new. Something she didn't have a name for yet. But it felt like the beginning of freedom. And freedom tasted bitter and sweet all at once. Chapter 3. 5 years and 1 phone call. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it teaches you which ones you can live with. The garden smelled of earth and possibility. Tara knelt in the dirt outside her small rental house, her hands working the soil with practiced ease. The morning sun warmed her back, and somewhere nearby, a neighbor's wind chimes sang softly in the breeze. She had been living here for almost 3 years now, in this tiny house with its postage stamp yard, and she had made it hers in ways the big house with Neil's never truly was. Every plant here she had chosen. Every stone in the path she had placed. Every decision about what grew and what didn't was hers alone. There was power in that. Quiet, humble power that came from building something with your own hands and watching it flourish. The tomato plants were heavy with fruit, red and orange globes hanging from their vines. She had planted them from seedlings, had staked them herself when they grew too tall, had picked off the hornworms that tried to destroy them. The herbs grew in neat rows: basil, oregano, thyme, cilantro, each one planted at just the right time, each one thriving under her care. She used them in her cooking, giving flavor to the simple meals she prepared for herself. And along the fence, she had planted flowers, zinnias. She had bought the seeds before reading the name on the packet, and when she saw it, her hand had frozen over the cash register at the garden center. Zinnia, her daughter's name printed there in cheerful letters, mocking her loss. She had almost put them back, almost walked away, almost let the pain of the association stop her from having something beautiful. But then something stubborn in her said no. The flowers were beautiful. They belonged in her garden, and just because they shared a name with someone who had hurt her didn't mean they should be denied the chance to bloom. Maybe that was true for her daughter too. Maybe Zinnia, the person, deserved a chance to grow beyond the mistakes she'd made, even if Tara wasn't ready to be part of that growth. So she planted them. And they grew, and now they lined her fence in shades of pink and orange and red. Every morning she looked at them and felt a complicated mix of pain and pride. They were both a reminder and a rebellion, a wound and a healing. They existed in the space between her past and her present, refusing to be only one thing. Tara had built a life here. Small, yes. Simple, certainly. But wholly hers in a way nothing had been before. She had graduated from the overnight diner shift to daytime work at a small cafe, where the owner, a kind woman named Liv Thorne, treated her employees like humans. Liv remembered birthdays, asked about her garden, gave her leftover pastries at the end of the day. It was nothing grand, but it was kindness. And Tara had learned to value kindness over everything else. She still cleaned houses, but fewer of them, and she had learned to say no to the ones that treated her poorly. The first time she had declined a job, a woman who followed her around criticizing every corner she cleaned, every dish she washed, she had felt powerful in a way she never had before. She didn't need anyone's mistreatment. She had choices now. The grocery store job was gone, replaced by occasional catering work that paid better and respected her time. She worked weddings sometimes, ironically enough, serving champagne and hors d'oeuvres to people celebrating love while her own marriage lay in ruins behind her. But she didn't mind. Their joy didn't diminish her pain, and watching people commit to each other didn't make her bitter. If anything, it reminded her that love could exist without cruelty. That partnership didn't have to mean erasure. She attended Reverend Thorne's church every Sunday, Liv's brother, as it turned out, and sang in the choir. Her voice had always been strong, but years of silence had made her forget that. Now, standing with the other singers, letting hymns pour from her throat, she remembered what it felt like to be heard, to have her presence acknowledged and welcomed. She had made a few acquaintances, not friends exactly. She held people at arm's length, afraid to let them close enough to hurt her, but people who smiled when they saw her, who asked how her week had been, who remembered small details about her life. It was enough. Odalis had passed away the previous winter, quietly in her sleep. Tara had found her, had called the authorities, had sat with the old woman's body until they arrived. At the small funeral, Tara learned she had been one of the few people Odalis had truly cared about. The old woman had left her a small inheritance, just enough for a down payment on this little house. Use it to put down roots, the note had said. You've been flying long enough. So Tara had found this place, signed the lease, and planted her garden. Roots. She was growing them, slowly but surely. She never called Niels. He never called her. The divorce had been processed through lawyers, cold and businesslike, splitting assets she no longer cared about. She took nothing but what she had earned on her own and walked away from the rest. Let him keep the big house, the expensive furniture, the life they had built together. She wanted none of it. Those things carried too much weight, too many memories of the woman she used to be, the woman who had been diminished and dismissed until she nearly disappeared. Zinnia had never reached out. Not once in 5 years. No call, no letter, no apology. No birthday card, no holiday message, no accidental text meant for someone else that might have opened a door. The silence from her daughter was complete and absolute, as if Tara had died the day she walked out. That silence hurt more than anything Niels had done. A husband could disappoint you. You entered that relationship as an adult, with some understanding that people could fail each other. But a daughter, that was a wound that went bone deep. That was a betrayal that cut through every layer of protection Tara had built around her heart. Tara had made peace with it, or told herself she had. Some nights she still lay awake wondering what Zinnia looked like now, whether she was happy, whether she ever thought about the mother she had discarded like unwanted furniture. Did she feel guilt? Did she feel anything at all? Or had she simply moved on, convinced herself that Tara had been the problem, rewritten history to make herself the victim instead of the perpetrator? But those nights came less frequently now. The ache had dulled to a throb she could ignore most days. She had learned to live with the absence, the way you learn to live with a missing limb, always aware of what should be there, but functional nonetheless. She was repotting geraniums when her phone rang. The sound startled her. Not many people called her. Liv occasionally, to ask if she could take an extra shift. The woman whose house she cleaned on Thursdays, to confirm the appointment. But it was early afternoon, and neither of them would call now. Tara wiped her hands on her jeans and pulled the phone from her pocket. The number on the screen made her breath catch in her throat. She knew that number. She had deleted it from her contacts years ago, but the digits were burned into her memory. Niels. Her thumb hovered over the decline button. She should ignore it. She should let it go to voicemail. She should throw the phone in the dirt and go back to her flowers. But something, curiosity maybe, or the ghost of who she used to be, made her answer. Hello? Her voice was steady, giving nothing away. There was silence on the other end, just breathing. For a moment she thought it was a pocket dial, or a mistake. Then his voice came through, and it was like hearing a stranger. Tara, just her name, spoken like a question and an answer all at once. She said nothing. Waited. He cleared his throat. I know I have no right to call you. I know that. Then why are you calling? Her tone was neutral, neither warm nor cold. Another pause. She could hear him struggling, could picture him on the other end of the line, trying to find words that wouldn't exist, no matter how long he searched. Zinnia is getting married. The words hit her like a physical blow. Married. Her daughter was getting married. And Tara hadn't known she was even seeing anyone, hadn't known anything about her life for 5 years. "Congratulations," Tara said flatly. "She wants you to come." His voice cracked slightly. "To the wedding? She wants you there." Tara almost laughed. "Almost. Does she?" "Yes. Then why isn't she calling to ask me herself?" Silence. That told her everything she needed to know. Zinnia hadn't asked him to call. This was Nils's idea. Maybe Zinnia didn't even know he was calling. "She's afraid to call you," Nils said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's afraid." Tara's voice sharpened. "She shut me out of her life. She treated me like I was nothing. And now she's afraid." "Yes," a pause. "We both are." Tara closed her eyes. The sun was warm on her face. The wind chimes sang. Her garden grew around her, proof that she had survived and thrived without them. "Please." The word broke something in Nils's voice. "Please, Tara, come to the wedding." "I'm asking you. No, I'm begging you. Why would I do that?" She kept her voice even, but her hands were shaking. "Because," he struggled, "because despite everything, she's still your daughter. And maybe you need to see this. Maybe we all need you to see this." "See what?" "See who we became without you." His voice was thick with something, regret maybe, or sorrow. "Please, I know I don't deserve to ask, but I'm asking anyway." Tara stood in her garden, phone pressed to her ear, and felt the weight of 5 years pressing down on her. She should say no, should hang up, should protect herself from more pain, but a small voice whispered, "Go, not for them, for yourself." "When?" The word came out before she could stop it. She heard him exhale, shaky and relieved. He gave her the date, the time, the location. She listened without writing anything down. She would remember. Her memory was good for wounds. "Thank you," Niels said, his voice breaking. "Thank you, Tara." She ended the call without responding and stood there holding her phone, staring at her zinnias. They swayed in the breeze, beautiful and indifferent to the turmoil in her chest. Zinnia was getting married. Her daughter was getting married, and Tara hadn't been there for any of it, hadn't helped pick the dress, hadn't given advice about marriage, hadn't been part of any of the moments leading to this day. She could still say no, could decide not to go, could protect herself from walking back into a world that had rejected her, but something in her needed to see this, needed to see them, needed to show them the woman she had become in their absence. Tara knelt back down in the dirt and continued repotting her flowers. Her hands worked automatically while her mind spun with the decision she had just made. She would go to this wedding. She would walk into that hall, and she would show them exactly what they had thrown away. Chapter 4. Return to the battlefield. Sometimes you have to walk back into the fire to prove to yourself you won't burn. The dress hung in Tara's closet like a question she wasn't sure she wanted to answer. Deep wine-colored fabric that caught the light when she moved. She had found it at a small boutique run by a woman named Petra Voss, who had taken one look at Tara and said, "You're going somewhere you don't want to go, but you're going anyway." "How did you know?" Tara had asked. "I've seen that look before. The look of a woman preparing for battle." Petra had pulled the dress from a rack. "This is armor. Wear it." Now, standing in front of her mirror, Tara smoothed the fabric over her hips and studied her reflection. She looked different from the woman who had walked out 5 years ago. Her face had lost its softness, gained definition. Her eyes held something new, not hardness exactly, but strength. The kind that comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. She had practiced this, practiced her face in the mirror, neutralizing every expression, removing every vulnerability. She would walk in calm. She would stand strong. She would show them nothing that could be used against her. The night before had been sleepless. Tara had lain in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in her mind. What would she say if Niels spoke to her? How would she react if Zinnia approached? Should she stay for the whole ceremony or leave after showing her face? By dawn, she had decided, she would let them make the first move. She would simply exist, and her existence alone would be enough. The drive to the venue felt both endless and too short. Tara's hands gripped the steering wheel of her modest car, nothing like the luxury vehicles Niels favored, but it was paid for, and it was hers. As she pulled into the circular drive of the Grandview estate, she felt her stomach tighten. The venue was magnificent. Rolling gardens stretched in every direction, perfectly manicured. The main building was all glass and white stone, elegant and expensive. Luxury she had once lived in, now foreign as a dream. Cars were parked in neat rows, expensive models shining in the afternoon light. This was Niels's world. She had almost forgotten what it looked like. Tara parked far from the entrance, needing a moment to breathe before walking in. Through the car window she watched people arriving, women in cocktail dresses and men in tailored suits. Laughter floated on the air. Everyone looked comfortable, like they belonged. She almost turned around, almost started the car and drove away. But then she remembered 5 years of scrubbing floors, 5 years of eating meals alone, 5 years of silence from people who should have loved her. She had not survived all of that to run away now. Tara stepped out of the car. The dress moved with her, the fabric whispering against her skin. She had worn simple jewelry, small earrings, no necklace, no rings. She needed no adornment. The dress was enough. Her presence would be enough. As she walked toward the entrance, she noticed people watching her. A woman in a blue dress nudged her companion and whispered something. A man in a grey suit did a double-take. Tara kept her face neutral, her steps measured and calm. Near the entrance, she saw a cluster of people she recognized. Nils's colleagues, people she had hosted dinners for, had made small talk with at parties, had smiled at for years. When they saw her approaching, their conversation stopped. One of them, a woman named Embla Lund with sharp eyes and sharper suits, stared openly. "Tara," Embla said, disbelief in her voice. "Is that—" "It is you." Tara gave a slight nod. "Hello, Embla. I didn't know you were—" Embla trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. "Here?" Tara supplied. "I was invited." The others exchanged glances. Tara could see the questions in their eyes, the gossip already forming on their tongues. Let them wonder, let them whisper. She had nothing to hide and nothing to prove. She moved past them and into the entrance hall. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting prismatic light across marble floors. Flowers, thousands of them in shades of white and cream, were arranged in towering displays. Everything was perfect, orchestrated, expensive. More heads turned as she entered, more whispers. She heard fragments of conversations, thought she was gone, never expected to see. Her looks different. Lucinda walked away with nothing. Tara let their words wash over her without touching her. She had learned to live with talk, with judgment, with the weight of other people's opinions. They could say what they wanted. She was here for herself, not for them. The main hall opened before her, rows of chairs set up facing an altar decorated with more flowers. Guests were beginning to find their seats. Tara stood at the back, uncertain where to go, unwilling to draw more attention by asking. Then she saw movement at the front of the hall. Her figure turning. Niels. Even from a distance she could see him clearly. His hair was different, grey at the temples, less of it than before. His face had new lines carved deep around his mouth and eyes. He wore an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, but somehow he looked smaller than she remembered, as if the years had taken something from him that money couldn't replace. Their eyes met across the length of the hall. The distance between them felt like miles and inches all at once. She watched him freeze, watched his face drain of color like someone had pulled a plug. His hand, holding a glass of champagne, began to tremble. Small shakes at first, barely noticeable, then violent tremors that made the liquid slosh dangerously close to the rim. Tara didn't move, didn't smile, didn't frown. She simply stood there, holding his gaze with the calm strength she had practiced in her mirror, and let him see what she had become without him. The glass slipped from his fingers. The sound of crystal shattering against marble echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Champagne spread across the floor in a golden puddle, shards of glass glittering like diamonds. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned, and in the sudden silence, Tara Wash stood at the back of the hall, draped in her wine-colored dress, and watched Niels Jensen fall apart at the sight of her. Someone whispered, loud enough for Tara to hear, "She's here. The wife who walked away is here." The words rippled through the crowd. Recognition, curiosity, judgment, vindication. Tara lifted her chin and walked further into the Haltu. The battlefield had been joined. Chapter 5, The Shattering Power Isn't Loud. Power is the sound of someone breathing steadily while the world around them falls apart. The shattered glass caught the light like scattered stars on the marble floor. Niels Jensen stood in the center of the chaos, his hands still extended as if the champagne flute might reappear if he wished hard enough. Around him, guests had fallen silent, the kind of silence that happens when everyone is holding their breath at once. Tara remained where she was, still as stone. She had not planned this moment, but now that it was happening, she understood its power. She had simply walked into a room, and a man had come undone. Not with words, not with actions, simply with existence. Her presence alone had been enough to shatter his carefully constructed composure. She could see him trembling from where she stood, could see the way his chest rose and fell too rapidly, breath coming in shallow gasps like a drowning man. Could see the color draining from his face, leaving him pale and ghostly in the soft lighting of the chandelier above. He looked like a man seeing his own death, or perhaps his own judgment, walking toward him in a wine-colored dress. A young server rushed forward with towels to clean up the mess, apologizing unnecessarily. His hands shook as he collected the shards of broken crystal, casting nervous glances at Niels, at Tara, at the frozen guests surrounding them. The poor boy probably had no idea what he had walked into, what drama was unfolding around his minimum-wage job. Embla Lund moved toward Niels, her hand reaching for his elbow, concern written across her sharp features. She was a woman who prided herself on reading situations, on knowing what to do, on maintaining control. But even she looked uncertain now, caught off guard by the intensity of Niels's reaction. "Niels," she said quietly, her voice low and urgent, "are you all right?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His eyes remained locked on Tara, wide and haunted, like a man seeing his own ghost, like someone confronting the walking evidence of his worst sins. His jaw worked soundlessly, trying to form words that wouldn't come. His hands, usually so steady and sure, curled into fists at his sides, as if he needed something to grip, to keep himself from falling apart completely. The guests around them whispered and shifted, uncomfortable witnesses to something private and devastating. Some looked away, embarrassed to be watching. Others stared openly, unable to tear their eyes from the spectacle. A few pulled out phones, though Embla shot them such sharp looks that they quickly put them away again. This was not a moment for social media. This was something raw and real and painful. Tara took 3 steps forward. Just 3. Enough to be closer, to be more real, to make him understand that she was not a hallucination or a memory. She was flesh and blood in here. Each step echoed in the silent hall, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown. With each step, Niels seemed to shrink a little more, as if her proximity was physically diminishing him. Niels's mouth opened, then closed. His hands trembled at his sides. She watched him try to compose himself, watched him reach for the authority he usually wore like armor, watched him fail. The mask was slipping, cracking, falling away piece by piece. The man everyone feared, the man who commanded rooms with his presence, was falling apart at the sight of the woman he had tried to erase. Tara. He finally spoke her name, and it came out broken, barely recognizable as a word. His voice cracked on the 2 syllables, making them sound like a question and a plea and an accusation all at once. She said nothing. Her silence was a weapon she had learned to wield with precision. In the month he had given her nothing but silence, she had learned its power. She had learned how it could cut deeper than words, how it could fill a space more completely than conversation. Now she turned that weapon back on him, and he crumbled under its weight. "You came," he continued, his voice stronger, but still fractured at the edges, still carrying the tremor of a man barely holding himself together. "I didn't think. I wasn't sure." "You asked me to come," Tara replied, her tone neutral and measured, giving nothing away. No warmth, no coldness, just facts, delivered with the precision of a surgeon making an incision. "So I came." Around them the hall had begun to move again. People returned to their conversations, but their attention remained on the drama unfolding in their midst. They pretended to talk about other things, but their eyes kept sliding back, hungry for the next development. The server finished cleaning up the broken glass and disappeared, probably grateful to escape the tension that hung in the air like smoke. Embla stepped back, giving them space but watching carefully, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. She was already cataloguing this moment, Tara could tell, already understanding its significance, already calculating what it meant for the carefully ordered world she inhabited. Niels looked at Tara the way a drowning man looks at land, desperate, disbelieving, terrified that it might disappear if he looked away. His eyes traveled over her face, taking in the changes 5 years had wrought. The new lines around her eyes, the strength in her jaw, the way she held herself, straight-backed and proud, no longer curving inward to make herself smaller. "You look." He struggled to find the word, his mind clearly racing through options and finding all of them inadequate. "Different. I am different," Tara said simply. The words carried weight, carried truth, carried the echo of 5 years of transformation he had not witnessed. "I can see that." His eyes continued their journey across her features, and she could see the moment realization hit him that this wasn't just a superficial change, that the woman standing before him was fundamentally altered, rebuilt from the ruins he had left behind. "You look strong." "I had to be." The words landed like a slap, and she meant them to. The words landed like a slap. Niels flinched, his jaw tightening. He glanced around, suddenly aware of how many people were watching them, how public this moment had become. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Somewhere private?" No." The word was firm and final. "Please, Tara, there are things I need to say to you." "Then say them here. I have nothing to hide from these people." "Do you?" His face paled further. She could see him calculating, weighing what he wanted to say against what he was willing to say in front of an audience. The math wasn't working in his favor. Before he could respond, movement at the front of the hall drew everyone's attention. The ceremony was about to begin. Music started to play, something soft and romantic that Tara didn't recognize. Guests began filing toward their seats, glancing back at Niels and Tara as they moved. "I should find a seat," Tara said, turning to go. "Wait!" Niels' hand shot out, almost grabbing her arm before he caught himself and pulled back. "Please, after the ceremony." "Can we talk after?" Tara looked at him for a long moment, saw the desperation in his eyes, the way his shoulders curved inward, as if his body was collapsing under the weight of something he couldn't carry anymore. "Maybe," she said, giving him nothing concrete. Then she walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the hall. She found a seat in the back row, far from the family section where she presumably would have sat if things were different. An older couple sat beside her, and they nodded politely without recognition. Good. She could observe without being observed. The hall filled quickly. Tara watched people take their seats, watched the wedding party assemble at the front. Bridesmaids in pale pink dresses, groomsmen in charcoal grey suits. Everyone was beautiful and nervous and excited. Then the music changed, and everyone stood. Tara rose with them, her heart suddenly pounding. She told herself to breathe, to stay calm, to remember why she was here. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment the doors at the back opened, and she saw her daughter, Zinnia. She looked so much older than Tara remembered, not just physically, though she had certainly grown into a woman. There was something in her bearing, the way she carried herself, that spoke of years Tara hadn't witnessed. Her wedding dress was stunning, livery lace over satin, elegant and simple. Her hair was swept up, revealing the long neck Tara used to kiss when Zinnia was a baby. Zinnia walked down the aisle on Niels's arm, father and daughter moving in sync. Tara watched them approach, watched Zinnia smile at guests as she passed, watched her laugh at something Niels whispered to her. Then Zinnia's eyes swept across the crowd, and she saw Tara. The effect was instantaneous. Her smile vanished. Her steps faltered, causing Niels to stumble slightly beside her. Color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and shocked beneath her makeup. Her bouquet trembled in her hands. Tara held her daughter's gaze, saw recognition, saw shock, saw something that might have been guilt or fear or both. Zinnia's eyes widened further. Her mouth opened in a small O of surprise. She stopped walking entirely, frozen in the middle of the aisle, guests on both sides staring at her with confusion. Niels tugged gently on her arm, trying to get her to continue. "Zinnia," he whispered urgently, "keep moving!" But Zinnia couldn't move. She stood rooted to the spot, staring at her mother as if seeing something impossible, as if the dead had risen. As if the past had walked through the door and was now sitting in the back row, watching her get married. The music continued to play. The officiant at the front looked confused. The groom, a tall man with kind eyes whom Tara had never met, craned his neck to see what had caused his bride to stop. "Mom," Zinnia whispered, the word carrying in the silent hall. "You're here." Tara said nothing, gave nothing. Just watched her daughter struggle with the reality of her presence. Finally, Niels managed to get Zinnia moving again. They completed their walk down the aisle, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen Zinnia's reaction. Everyone had seen her shock, her fear, her guilt written plainly across her face. When they reached the front, Niels released Zinnia's arm and moved to take his seat in the front row. But his legs wouldn't cooperate. He swayed slightly, caught himself on the edge of a chair, and sank down with none of his usual grace. Tara could see his hands shaking even from where she sat, could see how he gripped the chair in front of him, knuckles going white with the effort of holding on. Could see how he kept glancing back toward her, his face a mask of barely contained emotion. The ceremony began, but no one was paying attention. All eyes kept sliding toward the back row, toward Tara, toward the woman whose mere presence had shattered the carefully constructed peace of this celebration. The officiant spoke about love and commitment. The couple exchanged vows. Rings were placed on fingers. But through it all, Tara could feel the weight of attention on her, could feel the hall holding its collective breath, waiting to see what would happen next. She sat perfectly still, her face revealing nothing, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She was the eye of the storm, quiet and centered while chaos swirled around her, and in that moment, everyone watching understood something fundamental. Tara Wash had not come here to beg forgiveness or seek reconciliation. She had come to show them exactly what they had thrown away. She had come to let them see the woman they had tried to erase, standing tall and unbroken, despite their best efforts to destroy her. The ceremony concluded. The couple was pronounced married. Applause filled the hall, but it was muted, distracted. As everyone rose to move to the reception, Tara remained seated. She watched Zinnia and her new husband walk back down the aisle, watched them pass her row. Zinnia's eyes found hers again, and this time tears were streaming down her face, ruining her makeup, making her look young and lost. Tara's expression didn't change. She simply watched her daughter walk past, watched her disappear through the doors, watched the moment slip away. Only then did she stand. Only then did she take a breath that felt like it reached her lungs. Only then did she allow herself to feel the earthquake of what had just happened, but her face showed none of it. To everyone watching, Tara Wash looked untouchable, unshakable, victorious, and that, more than anything else, was the power she had come to demonstrate. Chapter 6. The ceremony stops. Some arrivals are louder than any announcement, and some silences scream louder than words. The reception hall was a marvel of wealth and taste. Tables draped in cream linens, centerpieces of roses and orchids, chandeliers casting warm light over everything. A string quartet played softly in the corner, while servers in crisp uniforms moved between guests with trays of champagne and delicate appetizers. Everything was coordinated, elegant, expensive. This was the kind of event that took months to plan and cost more than most people made in a year. Tara stood just inside the entrance, taking it all in. She had attended events like this before, back when she was Niels's wife, back when she belonged in rooms like these. She remembered standing beside him at fundraisers and galas, smiling at the right people, saying the right things, playing the role of the perfect wife. She had been good at it once, that performance. Now she was a stranger in a familiar world, and the contrast was not lost on her. She could see the difference in how people looked at her, not as an equal, but as a curiosity, a disruption, something that didn't quite fit. People filed in around her, chatting and laughing, moving toward their assigned tables. Their conversations were light, superficial, comments about the weather, the venue, how beautiful the bride looked. No one mentioned the shattered champagne glass or Niels's breakdown. They were pretending it hadn't happened, or at least pretending they hadn't noticed, even though everyone had seen it. That was how people like this operated, acknowledged nothing uncomfortable, maintained the illusion of perfection. Tara had no table assignment, no place card with her name written in elegant calligraphy. She was here but not here, present but not included, an uninvited guest who had been invited but not prepared for. The wedding planner had clearly not been informed of her attendance because there was no seat for her, no accommodation made for her presence. She found herself moving toward the edges of the room, where she could observe without being observed. A server offered her champagne. She took it but didn't drink, needing something to do with her hands. The glass was cool against her palm, the bubbles rising steadily toward the surface, beautiful and temporary, like so many things in life. Across the room, she saw Niels. He had been cornered by a group of people, colleagues or friends. She couldn't tell who were talking at him while he nodded absently. But his attention wasn't on them. His eyes kept scanning the room, searching until they found her. When they did, he stopped pretending to listen and simply stared. Tara met his gaze and held it. She took a small sip of champagne, the bubbles sharp on her tongue, and waited. She would not look away first. She would not be the one to break this silent standoff. She had spent too long being the one who yielded, who accommodated, who made herself smaller for others' comfort. Not anymore. He broke first. Excusing himself from the group, he began moving through the crowd toward her. People tried to stop him, to congratulate him, or ask questions about the ceremony, about the moment when the glass had shattered, about what had happened. But he brushed past them all, his focus singular, his need to reach her overwhelming everything else. Embla Lund stepped into his path, her body blocking his advance. She was small but formidable, and she knew how to use her presence to command attention. "Niels, what are you doing? You need to greet the guests. You need to—" "Not now," he said, his voice raw. There was an edge to it, a desperation that made Embla's eyes widen. "This is your daughter's wedding. You can't just—" "I said not now, Embla." He moved around her and continued toward Tara, leaving Embla standing there with her mouth slightly open, surprised by the forcefulness of his dismissal. In all the years she'd worked with him, he had never spoken to her like that. Embla watched him go, then looked toward Tara with something between curiosity and concern. She approached slowly, as if Tara were a wild animal that might bolt. When she was close enough, she spoke quietly, mindful of the guests around them. "Tara," Embla said when she was close enough, "it's been a long time." "It has. I didn't know you were coming." "I don't think anyone knew." Embla's eyes searched Tara's face, looking for clues, trying to understand what was happening. "Niels knew," Tara said simply. Embla processed this, her sharp mind working through the implications. "How have you been? Where have you been? I've wondered about you over the years." "Living," Tara replied. "Surviving. Building a life." "I wish I had reached out," Embla said, and she sounded genuine. There was regret in her voice, and it seemed real rather than performative. After you left, I wanted to call, but I didn't know what to say. And then time passed, and it felt too late, and she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. It's fine, Tara interrupted gently. You don't owe me anything. Still, I'm glad you're here. I think you need to be here. Before Tara could respond, Niels arrived. He looked worse up close. His face was drawn, his eyes red-rimmed, his hands still trembling despite his obvious efforts to control them. Tara, he said again, her name becoming a refrain. We need to talk. About what? About everything. About 5 years ago. About why you're here. About... He was interrupted by a commotion at the front of the room. Zinnia had entered with her new husband, and the guests broke into applause. But something was wrong. Zinnia wasn't smiling. She stood rigid beside her husband, her face pale, her eyes searching the crowd frantically. When she found Tara, she stopped moving entirely. Her husband said something to her, concerned, but she didn't respond. She just stared at her mother with an expression of such raw emotion that it made several guests uncomfortable. Zinnia, her husband said more urgently, loud enough that people nearby could hear. What's wrong? Zinnia didn't answer. She took a step toward where Tara stood, then another. Her husband tried to hold her back, confused and worried, but she shook him off gently and continued walking. The room fell silent. The string quartet stopped playing. All eyes followed the bride as she crossed the reception hall, her wedding dress whispering against the floor, her veil trailing behind her. Zinnia, don't, Niels said quietly, his voice tight with something Tara couldn't identify. Not here. Not now, but Zinnia wasn't listening to him any more than Tara had listened to him. She walked straight to her mother, stopping just a few feet away. Up close, Tara could see her daughter clearly. The woman Zinnia had become. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her jaw was set in a way that reminded Tara painfully of herself. But her eyes were swimming with tears that threatened to spill over at any moment. You came, Zinnia whispered. I was invited, Tara replied, her voice neutral. I didn't think you would. I didn't think... Zinnia's voice broke. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. Then why didn't you call? Why didn't you reach out? The questions hung between them, unanswerable and accusatory all at once. Zinnia's face crumpled. A tear escaped, running down her cheek and smudging her makeup. I was ashamed, Zinnia said, her voice barely audible. I was so ashamed of what I did, of what we did. And the longer I waited, the worse it got until I couldn't. I couldn't face you. Tara said nothing. Her face remained impassive, giving her daughter nothing to work with, no indication of whether this confession was enough or too little too late. Please, Zinnia said, her voice rising slightly. Please say something, yell at me. Tell me you hate me, anything. I don't hate you, Tara said quietly. Then what? What do you feel? Tara considered the question carefully. I feel like a woman who learned to live without you, and I'm not sure there's room to go back. The words hit Zinnia like a physical blow. She swayed on her feet, her hand coming up to her mouth to stifle a sob. Behind her, her husband rushed forward, concern written all over his face. Zinnia, he said, putting his arm around her. Come on, let's go somewhere private. You don't have to do this here. Yes, I do, Zinnia said through her tears. I have to do this here, in front of everyone, because I did this to her in front of no one. I raised her in private. I owe her this. She turned to face the room full of guests, all watching with rapt attention. Her voice rose, strong despite the tears. This is my mother, Zinnia announced. Tara Wash, the woman who raised me, who loved me, who gave everything to our family. And 5 years ago, my father and I shut her out of our lives for a month. We didn't speak to her. We didn't look at her. We treated her like she was invisible. And when she couldn't take it anymore and left, I didn't call. I didn't apologize. I let her disappear and told myself it was her fault. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People shifted uncomfortably. Embla had gone pale. Niels stood frozen, his face a mask of anguish. I was young and stupid and cruel, Zinnia continued, her voice breaking but persisting. I followed my father's lead because it was easier than standing up for what was right. And I lost her. I lost the best person in my life because I was a coward. She turned back to Tara, dropping to her knees in her wedding dress, the white fabric pooling around her on the floor. "Mom," she sobbed, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was blind. I was selfish. I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. And I know sorry isn't enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But please," her voice broke completely, "please don't leave me again. I can't lose you again. It's been killing me for 5 years. The room was silent except for Zinnia's crying. Her husband stood beside her looking helpless. Nils had sunk into a nearby chair, his head in his hands. And Tara stood there, looking down at her daughter kneeling before her, and felt something crack in the armor she had built around her heart. Chapter 7, The First Confession. The proud fall harder than the humble because they have so much farther to drop. Tara's hands moved before her mind could stop them. She reached down and touched Zinnia's face, her fingers gentle against tear-stained cheeks. The contact sent a shock through both of them, the first touch between mother and daughter in 5 years. "Get up," Tara said softly. "Don't kneel to me." "I deserve to kneel," Zinnia sobbed. "I deserve worse than kneeling. Maybe you do, but I don't want to see you like this." Tara's voice was firm. "Get up, Zinnia." Zinnia rose slowly, unsteadily, and Tara could see every emotion written across her daughter's face. Shame, guilt, hope, fear, love, all of it tangled together in a mess that no words could untangle. "I can't forgive you today," Tara said quietly, honestly. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you. What you did, what you both did." She glanced at Niels, who looked up at her with haunted eyes. "It broke something in me that took a long time to repair. And I'm not sure I want to break it again by letting you back in." Zinnia's face crumpled, but she nodded. "I understand. But," Tara continued, and she felt the weight of the word, "you're my daughter. And that means something, even when I wish it didn't. So I'm here. I came, I showed up, and maybe that's all I can give you right now." "It's more than I deserve," Zinnia whispered. "Yes, it is." The honesty of it made several guests gasp. But Tara wasn't here to be polite or to smooth things over. She was here to tell the truth, and the truth was complicated and painful and didn't fit into neat boxes. Zinnia's husband stepped forward, extending his hand to Tara. "I'm Casper," he said. "Casper Brandt. I've heard almost nothing about you, which I now understand was intentional." He shot a look at Zinnia. "But I'm glad you're here. I think Zinnia needs this, even if it's painful." Tara shook his hand. He seemed kind, seemed genuine. She hoped he was. Zinnia would need someone steady to help her through what was coming. "Congratulations on your marriage," Tara said formally. "Thank you." Casper looked between Tara and Zinnia, then said gently, "I'm going to give you two some space. But Zinnia, when you're ready, we should probably greet the guests. They're all staring." He was right. Every person in the room was watching them with undisguised fascination. This was better than any entertainment they could have planned. Casper squeezed Zinnia's hand and moved away, though he kept glancing back with concern. Zinnia wiped at her face, smearing makeup further, making her look younger and more vulnerable. "I ruined my wedding," she said with a broken laugh. "No," Tara said. "You told the truth at your wedding. That's different, is it?" "Yes." They stood in silence for a moment, neither knowing what to say next. The string quartet had started playing again, trying to restore some normalcy to the evening. Servers resumed offering champagne. People began talking in low voices, though their eyes kept returning to Tara and Zinnia. "Will you stay?" Zinnia asked. "For the reception? Or are you going to leave?" Tara considered this. Every instinct told her to go, to not push her luck, to get out before things got worse. But another part of her, the part that had driven her to come in the first place, wanted to stay, wanted to see this through. "I'll stay for a while," Tara said. Relief washed over Zinnia's face. Thank you. Thank you. Before either could say more, Niels approached. He walked slowly, like a man approaching a ledge, unsure if the ground would hold. When he reached them, he looked between Tara and Zinnia with an expression of such profound pain that it was almost hard to look at. "Zinnia," he said, his voice rough, "go be with your husband. Your mother and I need to talk." Zinnia looked at Tara, silently asking permission. Tara gave a small nod, and Zinnia left reluctantly, glancing back multiple times as she walked away. Niels and Tara stood facing each other. The last time they had been alone together, she had been packing her bag while he slept. The last time they had spoken, he had ignored her. Now 5 years later, they were strangers wearing the faces of people who used to know each other. "I destroyed you," Niels said, his voice breaking on the words. "I know that. I've known it every day for 5 years. Then why didn't you reach out?" Tara asked. "Why didn't you apologize?" "Because I'm a coward," he said simply. "Because I was ashamed. Because I convinced myself you were better off without me. Because—" He swallowed hard. "Because I didn't want to face what I had done. And now? Now I don't have a choice. You're here. You're real. You're standing in front of me, and I can't pretend anymore." His hands were shaking again. "Tara, I was wrong. About everything. I was cruel and cold, and I let my pride destroy the best thing in my life." "I'm not a thing," Tara said sharply. "I'm a person. A human being with feelings and worth. And you treated me like furniture." "I know." "God, I know." He ran his hands through his hair, making it stand up wildly. "I don't have an excuse. I was angry about something stupid. I don't even remember what anymore. And I decided to punish you by shutting you out. And Zinnia followed my lead because she was young and she looked up to me. And his voice broke. "I poisoned my own daughter against her mother." "What kind of man does that?" "The kind of man you were," Tara said evenly. "The kind of man I still am," he corrected. "Don't think I've changed, Tara. Don't give me that much credit. I'm still that same selfish, prideful man. The only difference is now I see it clearly. Then what do you want from me?" He looked at her with such intensity it was almost painful. "I want you to forgive me. I want to go back and undo everything. I want to wake up from the nightmare I've been living for 5 years. I want—" He stopped, took a breath. "I want things I have no right to want." "Like what?" "Like you. I want you back. I want my wife back. I want the woman who made our house a home. I want the person I threw away like garbage." Tears were streaming down his face now, not hidden or controlled. "I need you, Tara. I've needed you every day since you left, and I was too proud to admit it until now." Tara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a broken man. Not broken by circumstance or bad luck, but broken by his own choices. Broken by the weight of consequences he had never expected to face. "I'm not that woman anymore," she said quietly. "The woman you knew, the one who would have forgiven you, who would have come back, who would have done anything to save her family, she doesn't exist anymore. You killed her when you shut her out. Then who are you?" he asked desperately. "I'm the woman who learned to live without you. I'm the woman who scrubbed floors at midnight and planted gardens in the morning. I'm the woman who rebuilt herself from nothing. And that woman doesn't need you, Niels. She doesn't need anyone." The words landed like hammer blows. Niels staggered slightly, reaching for the back of a nearby chair to steady himself. His face had gone grey, his breathing shallow. "Please," he whispered. "Please don't say that. Please don't tell me it's too late. Why should I give you what you never gave me?" Tara asked. "You want me to make this easier for you? To comfort you? To tell you it's okay? I begged for one word from you for 31 days and got nothing. Now you beg for forgiveness and expect me to give it freely?" "No," he said. "I don't expect anything. I have no right to expect anything. But I'm asking anyway, because I can't live with this anymore. I can't carry this weight anymore. It's killing me, Tara. The guilt, the regret, the knowledge of what I destroyed, it's eating me alive." "Good," Tara said coldly. "Let it eat you. Let it consume you the way your silence consumed me. Maybe then you'll understand what you did." His knees buckled. She saw it happening in slow motion, the way his legs simply stopped supporting his weight. the way his body folded in on itself. He dropped to his knees in front of her, hands hitting the floor, head bowed. Around them, guests gasped. People moved forward to help, but Embla held them back with a sharp gesture. This moment belonged to Niels and Tara alone, however public it had become. "I'm begging you," Niels said, his voice muffled by his position. "I'm on my knees in front of everyone, begging you. Not for forgiveness, I know I don't deserve that, but for acknowledgement, for the chance to start making amends, for anything you're willing to give me." Tara looked down at him and felt nothing. No satisfaction in seeing him prostrate, no pleasure in his pain, just a cold, empty space where anger used to live. "Get up," she said finally. "Not until you answer me. Not until you give me something. Then you'll be down there a long time." She turned and walked away, leaving him kneeling on the floor, his shoulders shaking with sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. Behind her she heard gasps, heard whispers, heard someone say, "I've never seen him cry, never, not in 20 years. But Tara didn't look back. She had given them enough. Now they would have to live with what they had done, the same way she had lived with it for 5 years. The only difference was, she had survived it. She wasn't sure they would. Chapter 8. The Fall of the Mighty. There's a special kind of humiliation reserved for powerful men who realize too late what they've lost. Tara moved through the reception like a ghost, present but untouchable. She found herself near the windows overlooking the estate gardens, needing air and space and distance from the drama unfolding behind her. Through the glass, she could see flowers swaying in the evening breeze, manicured hedges casting long shadows in the fading light. The garden was beautiful, perfectly maintained, every leaf and petal in its proper place. It reminded her of the life she used to live, ordered, controlled, suffocating. She pressed her hand against the cool window and took a breath that actually reached her lungs. The glass was cold against her palm, grounding her, reminding her that she was real, that this was happening, that she had survived long enough to stand here. Behind her, she could hear the murmur of conversation, the clink of glasses, the nervous laughter of people trying to pretend they hadn't just witnessed something profound and terrible. The reception was attempting to return to normal, but normal had been shattered along with that champagne flute. And everyone knew it. "You're stronger than I expected," a voice said beside her. Tara turned to find Embla standing there, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She offered one to Tara, who took it more out of politeness than desire. The bubbles rose in the glass, catching the light, beautiful and ephemeral. "Strong enough to walk away," Tara replied. "Again, is that what you're going to do, walk away?" "I haven't decided yet." The truth of it surprised her. She had come here planning to make an appearance and leave, to show them what they had lost and disappear again. But something was keeping her here, something unfinished that needed resolution. Embla took a sip of her champagne, studying Tara over the rim of the glass, with eyes that missed nothing. "I worked with Niels for 12 years. I've seen him negotiate million-dollar deals without blinking. I've seen him face down competitors who wanted to destroy him. I've seen him handle pressure that would break most people. And I have never, not once, seen him cry." "Everyone cries eventually," Tara said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Some people seemed immune to tears, as if they had locked their emotions away so completely that nothing could reach them. Not him. He built his entire life around being unbreakable, around never showing weakness, around control. Embla paused, her eyes distant, remembering. "I've seen him fire people without a flicker of emotion. I've seen him lose deals worth fortunes and walk away like it meant nothing. I've seen him attend his own father's funeral with dry eyes. But you—" She looked at Tara with something like awe. "In 5 minutes you took all of that away from him. I didn't do anything. I just showed up." "Exactly," Embla said, and there was a weight to the word. "That's what makes it so powerful. You didn't have to fight or argue or make a scene. You didn't have to say anything profound or do anything dramatic. You just existed and he fell apart. That's real power." They stood in silence for a moment. Behind them, The reception continued its awkward dance between celebration and catastrophe. People kept glancing toward where Niels still knelt on the floor, his body racked with sobs he couldn't control. Some watched with sympathy, others with curiosity, a few with barely concealed satisfaction, perhaps glad to see the mighty brought low. "Someone should help him up," Tara said quietly, though she made no move to do so herself. "No one dares to. They're afraid to touch him when he's like this. Afraid of what it means." Embla looked at Tara, and there was something like understanding in her eyes. "You broke something in him today. Something fundamental. Something that can't be put back together. He broke something in me 5 years ago. Fair is fair. Is it? Fair, I mean." Embla's voice was thoughtful, not judgmental. She wasn't taking sides, just trying to understand. "Does his pain balance out yours? Does watching him suffer heal what he did to you?" Tara considered this honestly, turning the question over in her mind like a stone. "No, nothing balances. Pain doesn't work like that. It's not a scale where suffering on one side cancels out suffering on the other. But at least now he knows what it feels like to be powerless, to be ignored when you're begging for acknowledgement, to stand in a room full of people and feel completely alone. Maybe that's not balance, but it's something. He's been alone for 5 years, Embla said quietly, and there was sadness in her voice. I just don't think he noticed until you left. Some people can be surrounded by others and never feel lonely because they're so wrapped up in themselves. But when you left, it created a hole he couldn't fill. I watched him try. New projects, new pursuits, constantly staying busy. But nothing worked. That's not my problem, Tara said. But there was less conviction in her voice than she intended. No, it's not. Embla finished her champagne, setting the empty glass on a nearby table. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't reach out after you left. I should have. We all should have. But it was easier to follow his narrative that you had abandoned the family, that you were the problem. Easier than questioning him or facing what we all witnessed. What did you witness? Tara asked, curious despite herself. She wanted to know if anyone had seen, if anyone had understood, if her suffering had been visible to anyone besides herself. The month before you left, I came to your house for a meeting. I saw how he treated you, or didn't treat you, like you weren't there, like you were furniture or air or something less than human. Embla's voice grew quiet, heavy with regret. And I saw your face, the way you tried to smile, tried to pretend everything was fine, tried to make yourself smaller. I saw you serve coffee and offer food, and they took it without looking at you, without thanking you, without acknowledging you existed. And I knew something was wrong. I knew something terrible was happening in that house. Why are you telling me this? Tara's voice was barely above a whisper. Because you deserve to know that people saw, that people knew, that what happened to you wasn't invisible, even if we pretended it was. We witnessed your suffering and we did nothing. And that makes us complicit. Embla met Tara's eyes directly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that your pain was real, was visible, and we chose to look away. That's on us. Tara felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, she wasn't ready for that, but recognition, acknowledgement, someone bearing witness to what she had endured. Thank you, Tara said simply. Embla nodded and moved away, leaving Tara alone with her champagne and her thoughts. Across the room, people had finally gotten Niels to his feet. He stood swaying slightly, his face blotchy and red from crying, his expensive suit rumpled and stained from kneeling on the floor. He looked diminished somehow, as if he had physically shrunk, as if the act of crying, of showing weakness, of admitting his humanity, had actually reduced his physical presence. Several people surrounded him, speaking in low, concerned voices, but he wasn't listening to any of them. His attention was elsewhere. His eyes found Tara across the room. Even from a distance, she could see the desperation in them, the plea written across his features. The raw need for something only she could give. Forgiveness, acknowledgement, absolution. Something to ease the weight he was carrying. He moved toward her, shaking off the hands that tried to hold him back. People stepped aside, creating a path, watching with morbid fascination to see what would happen next. It was like watching a car accident in slow motion. Everyone knew it would be terrible, but no one could look away. When he reached her, he didn't speak at first, just stood there breathing hard, his chest heaving with barely controlled emotion. His hands opened and closed at his sides, as if he wanted to reach for her but didn't dare, as if he knew that any attempt to touch her would be rejected, and he couldn't bear another rejection. "I loved you," he finally said, his voice raw and scraped clean of pretense. "I need you to know that. Whatever else I did, whatever else I destroyed, I loved you." "Love doesn't erase cruelty," Tara replied, her voice steady despite the way her heart was pounding. "Love doesn't justify what you did. People use love as an excuse for all kinds of terrible things, but love without respect, without basic human decency, isn't love at all. It's just possession wearing love's mask. I know, but it's still true. I loved you, and I lost you, and I have no one to blame but myself." His voice cracked on the last word, and she could see him fighting to maintain composure, fighting and failing. "Then live with that," Tara said, and there was steel in her voice now. "The way I've had to live with it, the way I had to rebuild myself from nothing while you went on with your life. I can't." His voice broke completely. "I can't breathe without you. I can't sleep. I can't think. For 5 years, I've been walking around like a corpse, going through the motions, pretending I was fine. But I'm not fine. I'm dying, Tara. Every day without you is killing me. Every morning I wake up and remember you're gone, and it's like losing you all over again." "Good," she said again, and this time there was steel in her voice. "Die slowly. Die knowing what you destroyed. Die carrying the weight of your choices. Maybe then you'll understand what you put me through. Maybe then you'll grasp even a fraction of what it felt like to be erased by the people who were supposed to love you most." He reached for her. Not to grab, just to touch, his hand extending toward hers. She stepped back, putting distance between them. "Don't," she said. "Don't touch me. You lost that right." His hand dropped to his side. Tears streamed down his face, unchecked now, and he made no effort to hide them. Around them, guests had gone silent again, watching this intimate destruction play out in public. "I was a monster," Neil said. "I was a monster to you and to Zinnia, and I poisoned our home with my pride. I know this. I see it now. And if I could go back—" "But you can't," Tara interrupted. "You can't go back. None of us can. We can only live with what we've done and who we've become because of it." "Then tell me how to live with it," he begged. "Tell me how you survived. Tell me how to stop this pain." "I survived by leaving you," Tara said simply. "By removing myself from the source of my pain. By building a life that didn't include you. That's how I survived." The words hit him like physical blows. He stumbled backward, catching himself on a table edge. His whole body was shaking now, not just his hands. Tremors ran through him like earthquakes, visible to everyone watching. "I need you," he gasped. "I need you more than I ever admitted, more than I knew how to say. I was a fool. I was blind. I was He couldn't find words big enough for what he was trying to express. "You were the man who shut me out for a month," Tara said, her voice rising slightly. "The man who watched me beg and gave me nothing. The man who poisoned our daughter against me. The man who made me feel like I was less than nothing in my own home." With each accusation, Niels seemed to physically shrink. His shoulders curved inward, his head bowed. His breath came in ragged gasps. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, all of that. I was all of that." "Then carry it," Tara said. "Carry what you did. Let it weigh you down. Let it break you. Because that's what it did to me, and I had to learn to live with it alone. Now you can do the same." Something in him finally broke completely. His knees gave out again, and this time he didn't try to catch himself. He dropped to the floor at her feet, his hands clutching at the fabric of her dress, his body shaking with sobs so deep they seemed to come from his soul. "Please," he wept. Please, Tara, please. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve your mercy. But I'm begging for it anyway. Forgive me, before this regret kills me. Before I die carrying this weight, please." The entire hall had gone silent. No music, no conversation. Just the sound of Niels Jensen, successful, powerful, untouchable Niels Jensen, sobbing on his knees at his ex-wife's feet. People stood frozen, witnessing something they had never expected to see. The man who never bent was broken. The man who never cried was drowning in his own tears. The man who controlled everything had lost all control. And through it all, Tara stood above him, her face calm, her eyes clear, her silence more powerful than any words could have been. She looked down at him, clutching her dress, his tears soaking into the wine-colored fabric, his pride shattered into as many pieces as the champagne glass had been. This was his reckoning. This was his payment. This was the cost of what he had done, coming due all at once. And still Tara did not kneel. She did not comfort. She did not give him the absolution he so desperately sought. She simply stood there, unbroken, and let him understand exactly what he had lost. Chapter 9. The Daughter's Reckoning. Children inherit their parents' mistakes, but they don't have to inherit their pride. Zinnia appeared through the crowd like a storm breaking. She had removed her veil at some point, and her carefully styled hair was coming loose. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked nothing like the composed bride who had walked down the aisle. She looked raw, real, broken in a way that makeup couldn't hide. "Dad," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Get up, please get up." Niels didn't respond. He remained on the floor at Tara's feet, his shoulders shaking, his breathing ragged. Zinnia moved closer, and Tara saw her daughter's face up close. The shame written there, the guilt, the desperate need to fix something she didn't know how to repair. Casper followed behind her, his hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. "Dad," Zinnia tried again. "You're making a scene. You need to let him stay down there," Tara said quietly. "Let him feel what it's like to be at someone's feet, begging for scraps." Zinnia flinched. "Mom, please. I know you're angry. I know we hurt you. But this," she gestured at Niels, "this isn't helping anyone." "It's not about helping," Tara replied. "It's about truth. And the truth is, your father is finally facing what he did. Let him face it. He's my father," Zinnia said, her voice breaking. "I can't just watch him fall apart like this." "Why not? You watched me fall apart. You both did. For 31 days, you watched me break a little more each day, and neither of you cared enough to stop it." The words hit Zinnia like a slap. She staggered back, Casper catching her before she stumbled. "You're right," Zinnia whispered. "You're absolutely right. We watched you suffer, and we did nothing. We were the worst versions of ourselves, and you paid the price. So why should I make this easier for you now?" "You shouldn't," Zinnia said, and there was steel in her voice now. "You shouldn't make anything easier for us. We don't deserve your kindness. We don't deserve your forgiveness. We don't deserve you at all." She turned to the crowd of watching guests. Her voice rose, loud and clear, making sure everyone could hear. "Look at us," she commanded. "All of you, look at what we did. My father and I, we destroyed the best person in our lives because we were too proud, too cruel, too blind to see what we had. We made her invisible in her own home. We shut her out until she had no choice but to leave. And then we spent 5 years pretending it wasn't our fault." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Casper looked shocked, as if this was the first time he was hearing the full story. Even Niels had raised his head to stare at his daughter. "But it was our fault," Zinnia continued. "Every second of her pain was our fault, and we have to live with that. We have to carry that weight. And maybe," her voice broke, "maybe we don't get redemption. Maybe we don't get a happy ending. Maybe we just get to understand what we destroyed and spend the rest of our lives regretting it." She turned back to Tara, and her face was streaked with tears and running makeup. "I don't have the right to ask you for anything. But I'm going to ask anyway, because I'm still my father's daughter, and apparently we don't know when to stop." "Ask what?" Tara said. "Can you forgive me someday? Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not for years. But someday? Can you find it in yourself to let go of what we did to you?" Tara looked at her daughter, really looked at her. Saw the woman Zinnia had become without her guidance. Saw the regret, the shame, the desperate need for absolution. Saw, too, the way Zinnia had grown, the maturity that came from facing hard truths. "I don't know," Tara said honestly. "I honestly don't know if I can forgive you. The wound is too deep. The pain too fresh, even after 5 years. You weren't just my daughter. You were my heart, and you broke it." Zinnia's face crumpled. She dropped to her knees beside her father, her white wedding dress spreading around her like a cloud. Both of them now on the floor, looking up at Tara. "I know," Zinnia sobbed. "I know I broke your heart. I broke mine too. Every day without you has been agony. Every milestone I reached, graduating, getting engaged, planning this wedding, all I wanted was you there. But I had destroyed that chance, and I didn't know how to fix it." "You could have called," Tara said. "You could have written. You could have shown up at my door and apologized. You had 5 years to do something, and you did nothing." "I was afraid," Zinnia admitted. "Afraid you'd reject me. Afraid you'd tell me it was too late. Afraid I'd have to face what I'd become. So I did nothing, which was worse than anything." Tara felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, she'd been broken before, and this wasn't that. This was something thawing, something long frozen beginning to melt. "Stand up," she said softly. Zinnia looked up at her, confused. "What? Stand up, both of you. Stop kneeling to me like I'm something I'm not." Neil struggled to his feet first, his movements unsteady. Zinnia rose more gracefully, though her dress was wrinkled and dirty now from the floor. They stood before Tara, and she saw them clearly, not as the people who had hurt her, but as broken people who had hurt themselves as much as they'd hurt her. "I'm not a saint," Tara said. "I'm not some perfect victim. I'm just a woman who survived what you did to me, and I'm tired of being strong. I'm tired of being unbreakable. I'm tired of pretending this doesn't hurt." She felt tears gathering in her eyes for the first time since arriving. She had held them back all day, refused to let them fall, used them as a weapon to show how unmoved she was. But now they came anyway, hot and unwelcome. "You broke me," she said, her voice shaking. "Both of you broke me so completely that I had to rebuild myself from nothing. And the woman I became, she's strong, yes, but she's also lonely. She's independent, yes, but she's also isolated. She survived, yes, but she hasn't really lived." "Mom," Zinnia whispered, reaching for her. Tara stepped back. "No, let me finish. I need to say this." She took a breath. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can let you back into my life. I don't know if I can risk being hurt like that again. But what I do know is that holding on to this anger is poisoning me just as much as your guilt is poisoning you." She looked between them, her daughter and her ex-husband. 2 people who had destroyed her. 2 people she had loved more than anything. 2 people who were drowning in their own regrets. "I can't give you absolution," Tara continued. "I can't tell you everything's okay because it's not. But maybe," she paused, the word heavy on her tongue, "maybe we can find a way forward that doesn't require me to pretend the past didn't happen, and doesn't require you to spend the rest of your lives drowning in guilt." "What does that look like?" Niels asked, his voice hoarse from crying. "I don't know yet. Maybe it looks like phone calls once a month. Maybe it looks like coffee occasionally. Maybe it looks like slowly, carefully rebuilding something that can never be what it was, but could be something new." "That's more than we deserve," Zinnia said. "Yes," Tara agreed. "It is, but maybe I'm not giving it because you deserve it. Maybe I'm giving it because I deserve peace. And I'll never have peace if I'm carrying this hatred forever." She reached out and touched Zinnia's face, her thumb wiping away a smudge of mascara. The gesture was almost automatic, motherhood reasserting itself despite everything. "You're my daughter," Tara said softly, And that has to mean something even when I wish it didn't, even when it hurts, even when I'm not sure I can do this. Zinnia grabbed Tara's hand and held it against her face, crying harder now. Thank you. Thank you, Mom. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. No, Tara said firmly. Don't spend your life trying to make it up to me. Spend your life being better, being the person I always believed you could be. That's all I want. Around them, the guests had started to cry. Imbla was wiping her eyes. Caspar had tears streaming down his face. Even the servers looked emotional. Tara looked at Niels, who stood apart from their moment, respectful of the space between mother and daughter. His face was a mess, red, blotchy, aged beyond his years by grief. I can't give you what you want, she told him. I'm not your wife anymore. I'm not the woman who will come back and make your life whole again. That person is gone. I know, he said quietly. I know. But, Tara continued and saw hope flare in his eyes, I can give you closure. I can give you the knowledge that I'm moving forward, and maybe that will help you move forward too. Will you let me try? He asked. To make amends. To show you I've changed. Have you changed? Tara asked. Really? He considered this carefully. No, not really. I'm still proud, still stubborn, still the same flawed man who hurt you. But I see it now. I see what I am, and I'm trying to be better. That has to count for something. It counts, Tara said, but it doesn't fix anything. Change is action, not intention. Show me you've changed through what you do, not what you say. I will, he promised. I'll spend however long it takes. Tara didn't believe him, not entirely, but she could see he believed himself, and that was something. She looked at Zinnia, still holding her hand. You have a wedding to finish, guests to greet, a husband to dance with. Go be married, go be happy. And maybe someday, when enough time has passed, we'll figure out what comes next. Okay, Zinnia said. Okay. She hugged Tara suddenly, fiercely, desperately. Tara stood stiff for a moment, then slowly, carefully let her arms come up to hug her daughter back. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just a moment, complicated and painful and real, between a mother and daughter who had lost each other and were taking the smallest step toward finding each other again. When they separated, Zinnia rejoined Caspar, who wrapped his arm around her protectively. They moved back toward the wedding festivities, though the celebration had taken on a different tone now, quieter, more thoughtful, weighted with truths that had been spoken. Tara stood alone in the middle of the reception hall, and for the first time all day, she felt truly seen. Chapter 10. The Queen Stands Unbroken. Victory isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's simply standing tall while everyone else falls apart. The evening light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the reception hall. Tara stood at the center of it all, not at the edges where she had tried to hide, but firmly in the middle of everything, and felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. She had not planned this moment, had not imagined it, but here it was, happening anyway, and she understood its significance even as she lived it. Niels stood a few feet away, his face still wet with tears, his expensive suit rumpled and stained. He had not moved since Zinnia left. He simply stood there, looking at Tara with an expression that held everything he couldn't say: regret, longing, understanding that he had lost something irreplaceable. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "For coming, for staying, for not destroying us when you had every right to." Tara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man who had hurt her, but a man who had hurt himself just as badly. "I didn't come here to destroy you," she said. "I came to show you what survived your attempt to destroy me." He nodded slowly, understanding the distinction. "You're magnificent," he whispered. "You always were. I just forgot to see it." "No," Tara corrected gently. "You chose not to see it. That's different from forgetting. Forgetting is an accident. You made a choice." The words landed with the weight of truth. Neil's shoulders sagged further, but he didn't argue. Couldn't argue. She was right, and they both knew it. Embla approached, her sharp eyes softer than Tara had ever seen them. "I've worked in this world for a long time," she said, addressing Tara. "I've seen powerful people make moves, play games, crush opposition. But what you did today, standing here, saying nothing, letting your presence speak, that was the most powerful thing I've ever witnessed." "I just existed," Tara said simply. "Exactly. And your existence alone was enough to bring everything crashing down. That's real power." Around them, guests had begun to whisper again. Not cruel whispers, not gossiping ones, but words of understanding and recognition. Tara caught fragments. She walked away with, "Nothing. He never cried for anyone. 5 years she was. Gone. Look at her now. Look at him." The whispers created a chorus that told the story without Tara having to speak. They bore witness, they saw, they understood. Across the hall, Zinnia stood with Caspar, her hand in his, watching her mother with an expression of awe and regret mixed together. She had composed herself somewhat, wiped her face, fixed her hair, tried to restore some dignity to her appearance. But the wedding was forever changed. It would be remembered not for its elegance or celebration, but for this moment of reckoning. Tara knew she should leave, should make a graceful exit, should let them return to their festivities without her presence weighing everything down. But something held her there, not indecision but completion. She needed to see this through to the end. She walked slowly toward Niels. He watched her approach with a mixture of hope and fear. Uncertain what was coming, when she reached him, she spoke quietly for his ears only. "I want you to understand something. The woman you knew, the one who loved you, who served you, who tried everything to be enough, she died the day I walked out, and I mourned her. I grieved for who I used to be and who I could never be again." Nils' breath caught. Tears spilled down his face again, fresh and silent. But Tara continued, something new was born in her place. Someone stronger, someone who knows her worth, someone who will never again let anyone make her invisible. "I see that," Niels whispered. "I see her. I see you. Good. Remember what you see. Remember this feeling. Remember what it cost you to finally open your eyes. And maybe," she paused, considering her words carefully, "maybe it will make you better to whoever comes after me." "There won't be anyone after you," he said with certainty. "There might be. There should be. You're not meant to be alone for the rest of your life. But I am alone. I've been alone since you left. Having people around doesn't change that." Tara almost felt sympathy for him. Almost. Then learned to live with it. "I did." She turned to go, ready finally to make her exit. But Niels caught her hand, gently, asking permission rather than taking. She stopped, looking down at where his fingers touched hers. "Thank you," he said again, "for teaching me what I never understood. That love isn't about control or power or pride. It's about seeing someone fully and choosing them anyway. I never did that. I never chose you. I just expected you to be there." "Yes," Tara agreed. "You did. I'm sorry. I know it changes nothing, but I'm sorry." Tara pulled her hand free, but not harshly. "Good, be sorry. Let it teach you. Let it change you into someone who deserves the next person who trusts you." She walked away then, moving through the crowd toward the exit. People stepped aside, creating a path. Some nodded respectfully, some wiped their eyes. Some simply watched in silence as she passed. Near the door, Zinnia intercepted her. "You're leaving?" "Yes, I stayed long enough. Will I see you again?" Zinnia's voice was small, frightened. Tara reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her daughter's ear, a gesture she had done 1,000 times when Zinnia was young. "Maybe someday when we're both ready." "I'm ready now," Zinnia said desperately. "No, you're not. Neither am I, but we will be. Give it time." "How much time?" "As much as it takes." Zinnia nodded, accepting this. "I love you, Mom. I never stopped loving you, even when I acted like I didn't." Tara felt her heart crack open a little more. "I know, love was never the problem. It was respect. It was basic human decency. Love without those things is just pain wearing a different name. I understand. I do now. Good. Be better for Casper than I was for your father. Break the cycle. I will. I promise. Tara touched her daughter's face one more time, then stepped outside into the cool evening air. Behind her, the sounds of the reception continued. Muted music, soft conversation, the life of a wedding carrying on. She had done what she came to do. She had shown them. She had made them see. But more importantly, she had proven to herself that she could walk into the place that had wounded her and emerge unscathed. She could face the people who had broken her and remain whole. She could stand in a room full of judgment and criticism and simply exist, powerful in her truth. As she walked toward her car, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Embla, who had followed her out. "I just wanted to say," Embla began, "that in all my years, I've never seen anyone handle power the way you did in there. Most people wield it like a weapon. You wore it like dignity." "Thank you," Tara said. "He'll never recover from this. You know, Niels, he'll carry this until he dies. That's not my responsibility anymore." "No, it's not." Embla smiled sadly. "For what it's worth, I hope you find happiness. Real happiness, not just survival." "I'm working on it," Tara said. She got into her car and started the engine. Through the windshield, she could see the estate lit up against the darkening sky. Beautiful, expensive, hollow. It had never been her world, not really. She had just lived in it for a while. As she drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The building grew smaller, the lights dimmer, until it disappeared entirely. And Tara Wash drove toward her small house with its postage stamp garden and its zinnia flowers, toward the life she had built with her own hands, toward a future that belonged entirely to her. She had walked into the fire and emerged unburned. She had faced her destroyers and remained unbroken. She had stood in the center of judgment and remained calm. And in doing so, she had won a victory that had nothing to do with them and everything to do with herself. She had proven to them, to everyone watching, but most importantly to herself, that she was more than what they had tried to make her. More than invisible, more than discarded, more than broken. She was Tara Wash, survivor, garden grower, woman reborn, and that was enough. The end.